I stand on top of the world and become an eternal member of the world. I am a seed, I am ice and snow, I am the master of life, I am also the creator of reincarnation, and the world is in my hands. The world is shattered and recast under my will. The 7 original sins are my most loyal subordinates, and the 7 virtues are my most powerful assistants. Me. The laws of the world. Keywords of the novel. Greek mythology. Father's compassionate son, filial piety, great good people, no pop-ups, Greek mythology. Father's compassionate son, filial piety, great good people, complete collection download TXT, Greek mythology. Father's compassionate son, filial piety, great good people latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Reincarnation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Reincarnation. Quickly, 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 you silly people, hurry up. Can you do it? A young man, about 18 years old, was directing beside him while continuously tapping the mouse. His name is Lin Shi, and he is a prospective college student who has just graduated from high school. I'm better at playing with my feet than you guys, can you play? He continued on the microphone. Take a closer look at his record of 0/9/1 in the final game animation, 2 big words, failure, appear. Lin Shi sighed and said, ah. Why did you lose again? Help. I will definitely not play the next game. Give me a teammate who can take me flying. Last night, a meteorite from M78 crashed into the Tudo Garden community in Shihong City, and unfortunately one person died. Evening News reported. In the chaotic world, the god of creation, Chaos, was born in a chaotic world. However, rather than being a god, it is better to say that he is an embodiment of the world. He does not have his own independent and clear personality, he will only act according to instinct and be confused. So, driven by instinct, he gave birth to 5 gods with clear consciousness, which were the original gods. The primordial gods. These 5 primitive gods are respectively Gaia, who symbolizes the essence of the earth, Tartaros, who symbolizes the abyss of hell, Eros, who symbolizes love, Erebus, who symbolizes darkness, and the goddess Nyx, who symbolizes the unfathomable fate and the dark night. But the 5th primordial god, Eros, symbolizing love, fell for some reason. He dissipated his form like this and became a legend. While Gaia, who symbolizes the earth, was in a daze, a gentle breeze rushed to the bottom of his skirt, giving birth to 3 gods in his body. Her eldest son is the first divine king, Uranus, who symbolizes the sky. The second is Pontus, who was born from the concave surface of the earth at the bottom of the sea pit. The third is the mountain god Urea, who symbolizes the convex of the earth. Under the influence of lust, she gave birth to numerous gods along with Uranus and Pontus, including the 12 titans and the gods symbolizing the 5 marine forms. And with the development of the world, it needs a divine king to rule the world. So Uranus, who symbolized the sky, became the first divine king with the support of his mother and wife Gaia. But due to Uranus's brutality and his unpredictable emotions, he and several giant children of Gaia were stuffed back into Gaia's womb. So his wife Gaia couldn't bear his cruelty and violation of reproductive laws, so she asked his youngest child Cronus to use Gaia's black stone sickle to remove the symbol of Uranus male. And the laws of the world felt that Uranus had lost his male symbol and wanted to turn him into a goddess. However, Uranus is unwilling. So the world's laws forcefully separated Uranus from the goddess Gaia, and plunged him into eternal slumber in the deepest part of the sky. And Cronus, a deity who removed the male symbol of Uranus, became the second divine king. But before Uranus fell into deep sleep, Uranus issued a curse to Cronus, and he would also be replaced by the youngest child, and he would end up with the same outcome as Uranus. At the beginning, Cronus was gentle and attentive in taking care of the gods, fulfilling his duties as the king of the gods. Until Cronus gave birth to his first child with his goddess Rhea, he changed. He is worried that his child will take over his divine throne. So he actually used his divine power to put their child into his abdomen, and so on until the sixth. His wife could no longer tolerate his cruel behavior, so she used her petrified deity to turn the last child into a stone statue, and then turn the stone into the last child. Cronus did not suspect and swallowed the statue into his stomach. The sixth child was Zeus, and with the help of various gods, Zeus defeated their cruel father Cronus, becoming the third divine king. And Zeus's father, Cronus, also cast a curse on Zeus, and Zeus will be overthrown by his last child. Our story begins here, and Zeus began his absurd rule after becoming the divine king. Under Zeus's coercion, Demeter had a relationship with Zeus. Demeter's abdomen gave birth to a magical and infinitely capable embryo. Lin Shi's soul seems to have been brought to this magical and beautiful world by that meteorite. Perhaps you want him to change the difference in this world. And Lin Shi happened to blend into Demeter's body under the guidance of the light ball. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. God of Seeds. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. God of Seeds. Lin Shi stayed in Demeter's belly, and gradually, he began to wake up. Who am I, where am I? Lin Shi slowly thought about it with his already imperfect brain. While he was still thinking, a sudden suction came from his head, wanting to take him out, and he was born in this world of chows. At Mount Olympus, a dazzling light suddenly emanated, full of vitality and trials, seemingly the most primitive form of life, yet also a process of life growth. In a beautiful and mysterious valley, sunlight shines through the leaves and falls on the grass. A gentle breeze brushes against the leaves, making a rustling sound. In the distance, there are dense forests and clear streams. Suddenly, colorful and uniquely shaped flowers fell from the sky. They sway in the wind, emitting a charming aroma. Over time, these flowers gradually transformed into vibrant nymphu. In this wonderful world, various forms and colorful creatures are born. The entire scene is filled with joy and tranquility, making people feel endless beauty and joy. A handsome male god was born. He has long golden hair and a glint of wisdom in his eyes. He was wearing a magnificent robe, embroidered with colorful patterns, symbolizing the diversity of life. He was endowed with the mission of life from birth. The world's laws generously bestow the divine image of seeds, representing the initial appearance of plants. He gave a slight smile. In the mysterious forest, Lin Shi unconsciously dances with light steps. He has a slender figure, and his slender legs gracefully shuttle between the trees. His skin was as white as snow, as if emitting a pure radiance. His long golden hair cascaded down his back, and the slightly wavy ends fluttered gently in the breeze. His eyes were as clear and bright as a lake, sparkling with the light of wisdom. He was wearing a thin veil like Heaton, and his long robe fluttered with his dance, like a blooming flower. Shiduan is embroidered with delicate patterns, like blooming flowers in spring, giving people a feeling like a fairyland. His arms are slender, and his fingers are delicate and agile, as if he was born to play the music of heaven. He emitted a faint floral fragrance, making the surrounding air fresh and pleasant. He was also wearing a delicate crystal necklace, with a shimmering gemstone hanging from it, shining like a star. He is the guardian of nature, and his existence brings vitality and beauty to nature. Whenever he appears in front of people, it brings a peaceful atmosphere, as if the whole world is intoxicated by his beauty. The beauty of this deity is intoxicating, like an artwork, indescribably perfect. He is the pride of nature and a dreamy existence in everyone's hearts. The laws of the world generously tell chows that all living beings in the world, representing the birth of the deity in the earliest form of life, have been born, and the world generously bestows his name. Poseidon. As the son of Demeter, he naturally inherited Demeter's power in agriculture. So he became the god of seeds. Lin Shi, no, Poseidon looked sadly at his slender hands, warm as white jade arms, and a slender and white leg half exposed outside. Like the warmest and most beautiful flowers in the world, a deity. Posidonia looked at his handsome appearance in despair, while Posidonia looked at himself in the mirror, unsure of what to do. He knew his identity, he was the child of Zeus and Demeter, and he replaced the original seed goddess Persephone. He looked at his face, which was even more beautiful than most goddesses, but the difference was that there were a few handsome edges on his face. He roared in his heart, "Oh my goodness, why did you treat me like this? Why did you want me to come into such a messy world?" He knew the ending of this seed goddess, he knew he would eventually be played with by his brothers, and then forcibly taken away by the underworld king as an underground queen, sinking in endless darkness. Thinking of this, Posidonia thought of his fear of the future, but it also sparked his longing for the future. He was not someone who could accept his fate with ease. His mother Demeter saw Poseidon's dull expression and immediately ran over, ignoring the pain. She hugged Poseidon and said, "My child, what's wrong with you? Why do you show such a painful expression?" Posidonia saw that it was his mother in this lifetime, and his face showed a complex expression. He didn't know what to say, but could only say in a pinched voice, "My dear mother, my beloved god of agriculture Demeter, I seem to foresee my own ending. I will spend the rest of my life in the endless darkness beneath the earth." Posidonia didn't know how to say it, he could only describe what he knew as a prophecy. But the laws of the world do not believe so. They believe that Poseidon possesses the divinity of prophecy and should be a deity who prophesied. Therefore, the laws of the world bestow upon him the priesthood of prophecy. The prophesied deity fell into Poseidon's body. Poseidon became a god of prophecy, and now his divine title is the god of seed and prophecy. Demeter saw his son obtain the prophecy and immediately panicked, taking him back to the agricultural temple on Mount Olympus. The 12 main gods on Mount Olympus have not yet fully returned to their positions, and most of them are vacant. Will this be left for Poseidon? Demeter immediately let Poseidon hide in the deepest part of the agricultural temple. She touched Poseidon's face and said, "My child, Poseidon. You must not appear before the gods. Do you know how great wealth you are?" She gently touched Poseidon's golden hair and said, "My child, Poseidon. Although your priesthood is rare and powerful, without power, you can easily become a plaything for those ambitious male gods." She paused for a moment and said, "And the fate of the goddesses is similar to yours. Except for a few powerful goddesses, they have the ability to protect themselves. If other goddesses are targeted by male gods, they will also be forced to give birth." Demeter looked at the pair of sky-blue eyes that resembled Zeus with complex eyes, and said to Poseidon with complex expressions. Posidonia looked at Demeter in front of him and could only nod complexly, as if responding to Demeter's words. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Thinking about the future. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Thinking about the future. Demeter saw Poseidon nod his head and then repeated it, his voice even trembling as he said, "Poseidon, my child. You must not appear outside the temple of agriculture. Otherwise, you will be in danger. After all, Poseidon's priesthood is really very popular. For the gods on Mount Olympus, even Poseidon's father would feel tempted. After all, Poseidon possessed the power of Demeter's life, the ability to heal, and the powerful ability to predict his own fate. You should know that the powerful prophetic ability of Poseidon is possessed by no other deity except for the enigmatic Nyx. Although there are still some deities with the ability to prophesy, they are definitely not as powerful as Nyx's ability. It can be seen from this that the power of Poseidon is so powerful. But that His Highness Nyx is a primitive god. It is a deity born with the world. And Poseidon is just a god with weak divine power. How can Poseidon compare to the dark night and the unpredictable fate of Nyx? The levels of gods from small to large are weak divine power, weak equal divine power, moderate divine power, strong divine power, great divine power, and primitive divine power. If discovered by other gods, Demeter couldn't believe how her child Poseidon would suffer. After all, Poseidon once said that he prophesied that he would live forever in endless darkness. Demeter glanced at Poseidon and left the agricultural temple. But now Poseidon doesn't know what to do, he feels a wave of panic. He didn't know what to say, he felt a wave of fear and fear. In this world dominated by silver chaos, no deity is safe. Especially him, he is the least secure one. Because Poseidon possesses unparalleled beauty and extremely powerful auxiliary abilities. He is the favorite of all ambitious people, with the powerful healing ability of the agricultural goddess and the prophetic ability comparable to that of primitive gods. Poseidon shook his slender and well-proportioned hands, which were as fair and well-defined as those of mica powder. He suddenly thought that Zeus and Demeter had not yet reached the peak of their divine power. So he still has the opportunity to obtain a deity that can strengthen himself, so that he won't become the wife of the underworld king Hades. Perhaps that fate began to change when he spoke it out, but perhaps, under the influence of fixed numbers, it will return to the right track. Poseidon slowly looked at the power of plants in Demeter's hand. He is the initial form of plants and the starting point of plants. In fact, at the moment of his birth, his mother Demeter's divine power was enhanced and she became a deity with moderate divine power. At this moment, her mother's divine power level truly deserves the position of the main deity. Poseidon began to try his best to comprehend his priesthood, knowing that his mother Demeter's priesthood was not that of plants, but rather the god of agriculture. It is one of the most beloved deities of humanity. And that plant god Adonis has not yet been born. As long as one obtains the priesthood of the plant god Adonis before he is born, who can do what to him? Thinking of Adonis, Persephone had a strange expression on his face. In the original mythology, Persephone, who had become the afterlife, seemed to compete with the god of love and beauty, Aphrodite, for his ownership. If he gets the divine aura of the plant god, is it considered that he has obtained that little lover? Thinking of this, Poseidon's face finally breathed a soft sigh of relief. He knew what he had to do. The laws of the world made him a weak seed god, but he did not deprive him of his potential for ascension. Poseidon can possess the power of self-protection as long as he possesses a more powerful priesthood. And he is still the child of the current god King Zeus. Zeus can't be so tasteless, even his son must go up. So, when his mother Demeter returned, Poseidon planned to discuss with her and let him meet his debauched father. Poseidon hoped to receive the protection of his father, the divine king Zeus, and he could also temporarily become the deity of that divine king. Only in this way can he appear openly on Mount Olympus and understand what is missing in this world of chows, allowing him to make up for it. Moreover, even his mother Demeter overlooked one thing, which is that seeds take root, sprout, and grow in the soil. In the darkness. As the owner of his priesthood, his divinity also carries a hint of darkness and the power of the underworld. So, he is naturally able to develop in both life and death directions. If he is a normal person, he may abandon one direction and focus on understanding the other direction of the clergy. But who said that life and death cannot coexist anymore? After death, vitality is born, and the end of life will inevitably bring death. That's it. So, Poseidon immediately thought of that deity, and as long as there was that deity, the laws of the world would surely tilt towards him. He could even become the sixth primordial god. Poseidon pondered while looking at the seed condensed by divine power in his hand, and couldn't help but murmur, which direction should we develop first? If I were to move towards the side of life, there is a high probability that I will not have the ability to protect myself in the future. The only thing I can rely on is my mother, but her power is not enough to deter the wolves' pursuit. Moving towards the side of death would cut off the opportunity to obtain that power. Speaking of which, Poseidon's face showed a hint of unwillingness. One was the later benefits and the ability to gain stronger power, and the other was the ability to protect oneself in the early stages, but at the expense of future development potential. Poseidon is a bit unwilling. Isn't there a priest who can gain some self-protection ability in the early stages without affecting later development? Seeds. Posiadoni glanced at the sky, as if he knew something. Light is also a powerful deity, possessing one of the most powerful divine powers. But then Posiadoni frowned again, suddenly realizing that the source of light was in the hands of Phoebe, his betrothed Leon, and Thea. He frowned for a moment, unsure of how to obtain a stronger priesthood. He frantically ran his brain in an attempt to find the answer to this question. Water. 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 He knows now, he should be able to obtain that divine figure. In fact, for a moment, he wanted to obtain the power of the sun, but this deity was reserved by Zeus for his child with Leto. He, let alone him, even his mother Demeter may not be able to move Zeus. After all, Apollo's mother was not a dominant deity, so it's easy for Apollo's two siblings to control. But he is different. With his prophetic priesthood, Zeus could not have given him any priesthood. After all, he is now Zeus's youngest child. He could possibly overthrow Zeus's rule. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Seeds of the Tree in the World of Artifacts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Artifact. Seed of the World Tree. At the same time, Poseidon was hidden in the agricultural temple of Demeter. He seemed to have come up with an inconspicuous but powerful way to obtain divine power. He had previously thought about the characteristics of seeds and what seeds need. In fact, he forgot the most crucial point, which is water. The power of water is also necessary for seed development. Of course, this is the knowledge of his past life. Poseidon doesn't know if this rule can be applied in this world of Greek mythology. Posiadoni wants to obtain a priesthood about water. Suddenly, he realized that he didn't know how to start and obtain such a divine figure. Because the laws of the world only gave him memories of how to fulfill his duties and some basic information about the world of Chaos, without telling him how to obtain this power. Posiadoni circled around in the agricultural temple and whispered to Nymphu next to him, "Hello, I would like to ask where my mother has gone." Nymph is a secondary goddess in Greek mythology, sometimes translated as an elf or fairy, and is also considered a member of the fairies, appearing in mountains, fields, springs, oceans, and other places. It is a naturally transformed elf, usually the image of a beautiful girl who enjoys singing and dancing. They won't age or get sick, but they will die. They can also give birth to immortal offspring of gods by combining with the gods. Nymphu can be said to be a reserve of gods, as long as they have a divine personality. So, they will become a member of the gods. Nymphu, who was waiting beside her, looked respectfully at Poseidon and said, "Great prophecy in the god of seeds, His Highness Poseidon. Your mother, the god of agriculture, Your Highness Demeter, seems to have gone to search for the great divine King Zeus." Posiadoni glanced at this Nymphu and frowned. He always felt something was wrong with this Nymphu because he had just been born. And his mother Demeter told him that he must keep his priesthood confidential and not let other gods or creatures know. But how could this Nymphu know his priesthood? Posiadoni thought for a moment, this Nymphu should be a detective of some deity. Keep her for now and see what the people behind her are up to. Thinking of this, Poseidon smiled faintly. Subsequently, Posiadoni secretly planted a seed in the body of this Nymphu. If there was any action to leave the temple, this seed would have taken her life. If not, this seed would have given her an eternal and immortal life like that of a deity. Subsequently, Posiadoni sat on the throne of Demeter and looked towards the direction of the temple of Zeus. How much does Posiadoni miss his mother now? He really wants to get some information about the new clergy from his mother Demeter. Because although he obtained the priesthood of prophecy, he had no idea how he obtained it. He just casually said a few words and obtained the priesthood. Wait. Wait a minute. I said a few words. I really said a few words. At that time, the laws of the world were still in place, because of his birth, so, in order to obtain a priesthood first, then the laws of the world must be present. He needs to hear your demands in order to obtain that priesthood. That's not right. If that's the case, how did he obtain the priesthood of prophecy? Because although the laws of the world were present, he did not listen to Poseidon's demands. Thinking of this, Poseidon frowned because he had once again fallen into a stalemate. According to this logic, what does he rely on? Poseidon breathed a sigh of relief and muttered to himself, "Take your time." If this were the case, Apollo would not be able to obtain a powerful priesthood. He would fulfill his priesthood first. Poseidon initially believed that as long as he thought of things that had not appeared in the world of Chaos, he should be able to gain this power. But it seems that he has thought too much. If it's really that easy, then why are gods still so rare? It shouldn't be said that, what should be said is that the deities representing a source are so rare. There are quite a few regional deities or spring goddesses like that. From the message given by the laws of the world, regional and spring-related clergy were almost occupied by the children of Orianos and Tysas. The part about water is also under the control of Okeanos and Thais. The clergy regarding the concept of water is almost held by Pontus and his descendants. And some scattered priesthood that have not been mastered, to be honest, is not very useful. And Poseidon didn't even think of a way to obtain a priesthood. So for Poseidon, he needs to lay a solid foundation now, fulfill his priesthood first, and then obtain a new one. After all, no deity can ascend to the sky in one step. However, Poseidon seems to have overestimated this world. The gods in this world actually only fulfill their divine duties under the urging of world laws. They spend most of their time enjoying their pleasure and desires. This is also one of the reasons why when Aphrodite, the god of love and beauty, was born later, she was sought after by many gods. But because Poseidon did not carefully understand the gods of this world. So he was actually not aware that for the gods, they would only fulfill their duties under the urging of the laws of the world. And even when fulfilling, they may impatiently casually perfunctory a few times. Generally dedicated deities, they are very rare. Poseidon only learned a little about Greek mythology, he only knew that Greek mythology was very absurd, with his great father Zeus being the most famous. Poseidon carefully considered the role of his clergy and suddenly came up with a solution. Poseidon was wondering what would happen if a new plant were created. So will I become a symbol of that plant, or will that plant become its appendage? Or perhaps he could directly obtain the priesthood of that plant. Or is it that the clergy was born from the first plant he created and became his deity? Poseidon took off the necklace from its neck, which was a divine artifact bestowed upon him by the laws of the world when he was born. The name of this artifact is the seed of the world tree, although it sounds very powerful. But it actually only has one function, and this function is very useless. It derived the plant that the gods thought of through this seed. And there are also restrictions, it cannot give birth to offspring and will dissipate in the air after 3 days. For the gods living in the world of Chaos, this artifact is useless, after all, they can think of plants that can also become reality. That is only a plant that was born under the evolution of Gaia, the mother of the earth. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Dialogue between Zeus and Demeter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Dialogue between Zeus and Demeter. Poseidon knew he should go to understand the clergy, but he didn't know how to do it for a moment because his power was too weak. He didn't even have the extra divine power to accumulate to implement his ideas. He didn't know how to accumulate divine power, so he could only wait in the temple for the return of his mother Demeter. I hope his mother can bring good news. Poseidon looked in the direction of the temple of Zeus and was constantly daydreaming. However, it is not impossible to consider becoming a god of Zeus, as Poseidon sat on the throne in the main hall, holding his chin and secretly thinking. However, Poseidon still has some unwillingness. If he really has the ability to protect himself, who would want to become someone else's god? Although children instinctively belong to their parents as gods, but Poseidon knew that the deity in the future might overthrow Zeus's rule, but not now. That deity was still born by him. There are many versions of that deity, some say he is the younger brother of Athena, Polos. He went through 3 pregnancies and was strengthened time and time again, eventually becoming Dionysus and ranking among the 12 main gods. Thinking of this, Poseidon suddenly widened his eyes. He has now become a man. What should he do now? Thinking of this, he no longer had the mood to sit there peacefully, but fortunately, he is now a man. There are not so many concerns, but there is an increased possibility of being feared by Zeus. Poseidon could only honestly look at the decorations in the distant hall. Since his birth, Poseidon has never wanted to wait for someone to come back. How he wished his mother Demeter could return here. He didn't know what his mother had done, but he knew her must have been running around for him. Thinking of this, Poseidon sighed and didn't know how to do it. He doesn't know how to speak up about this matter. Meanwhile, on the side of Demeter. Demeter is discussing something with Zeus on the great hall of the divine king. Demeter calmly said to his brother Zeus sitting on the stage, "I, the great god king, Zeus, the ruler of Mount Olympus. Your child was just born, did you know? That was a deity with enormous potential. Although he was born with only a weak divine power, did you know that his power was really so powerful? He possessed the power of a seed representing origin, as well as the power of a prophecy comparable to that of one of the 5 primordial gods, who symbolized the unfathomable fate." Demeter looked at Zeus on the stage with a worried expression. Zeus, sitting on the stage, raised his eyebrows. His sky-blue eyes, like those of Poseidon, looked at Demeter below and said, "My lord, who symbolizes agriculture, don't worry. Can you please explain this matter carefully? I will provide my child with the respect they deserve." However, Demeter did not see the hand of Zeus holding the thunder wand going through a confrontation that others did not have, constantly releasing and clenching it. Although Zeus's expression appeared unchanged on the surface, his muscles relaxed and tightened, and his breathing began to be slightly heavy. Demeter did not doubt what his brother said, although he was very absurd and disorderly, his promise was the most valuable. Because he will not give up his authority as a divine king just to violate a small agreement. Demeter continued to worry and said, "Do you know that although he has enormous potential, his priesthood cannot protect him, and his divine power cannot give him the power he possesses? It is destined that he can only exist as an auxiliary god, even the most powerful among auxiliary gods." Zeus breathed a faint sigh of relief and said to Demeter with a relaxed expression, "My noble sister, who possesses the honor of the 12 main gods, can you please tell me what kind of priesthood my child possesses?" Demeter looked at Zeus with a strange expression on her face. It seemed that she had just told Zeus about the priesthood of her child. However, when Zeus asked, he explained it again and said to Zeus, "Our child possesses the divine power of a prophecy to predict the future and the power of the seed that represents the beginning of life." Zeus breathed a deep sigh of relief upon hearing Demeter's words. This divine son is not his father, but the one mentioned in the curse of the second god King Cronus who can overthrow him. Because he knew from one of his most important confidants, Prometheus, who represented his foresight, the divine son who could overthrow him. Yes, with the power of opportunity and revelry, it represents an undirected and unknown deity. But he knew that if he had always had a divine son born, then this deity would never have been born. That's why he breathed a sigh of relief when he heard Demeter's words. Because he found that his curse seemed to be avoidable as long as his divine son kept giving birth. However, from this perspective, it seems that his curse has been broken. Because this 4th-generation divine king represents the god of opportunity and revelry, Dionysus, the god of wine, was born from the belly of this seed goddess. Unfortunately, the current seed goddess has become a male. This means that the god of revelry and opportunity, Dionysus, will never be born. However, it is also possible that this opportunity in the god of revelry, Dionysus, will be born from another deity, which is also possible. Upon hearing Demeter's words, Zeus smirked and looked at him with wide eyes, saying, "Don't worry, one of my dear 12 main gods, Demeter, who symbolizes agriculture. I will hold a meeting on Mount Olympus to explain the birth of this divine son, who will become the most dazzling presence on the mountain. Zeus smiled again, his handsome face carrying a hint of survival, as if he had thought of something else. He said to Demeter, "Don't worry, I, as a divine son, will become my most important strength. I will always defend his safety and give him the power to guard the Olympus mountain. And he possesses this power and will become my best assistant. All his abilities will be granted my permission. All those who offend him will be enemies of me," Zeus said forcefully to Demeter in front of him. It's just what he thinks in his heart, and no one knows that he just promised Demeter so verbally. After all, for Zeus, there are many ways to fulfill the agreement, which depends on how Zeus does it. The so-called most prestigious existence also depends on what kind of situation it is. Demeter breathed a sigh of relief as she received Zeus's promise. So her child Poseidon is safe. After all, with her strength, she still cannot resist those ambitious gods for the time being. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Obtaining the Secret Divine Element. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Obtaining the Secret Divine Element. And in the agricultural temple, Poseidon looked at the seed of the artifact world tree in his hand. Now this artifact is really too weak compared to other artifacts in the world of Chaos, but its growth potential is the greatest. In the world of Chaos, the most powerful artifacts are basically the original artifacts, among which the Thunder Wand held by Zeus is the most famous. If the artifacts of Earth Mother and the other three primitive gods do not appear, Zeus's artifacts are the most powerful. But the seed of this artifact world tree is very important to Poseidon. Even if Zeus were to exchange it with the Thunder Staff, he wouldn't exchange it. Oh, no, if we use Zeus's Thunder Wand, he might still switch. Because the power of Poseidon is too weak now, and he doesn't even have the power to protect himself. And Zeus's Thunder Wand represents his thunder priesthood, as well as the symbol of a divine king, possessing immense power. Even a deity with a moderate divine rank may not be able to withstand a weak divine rank deity holding a thunder wand. Because this thunder scepter of Zeus is a symbol of the god King Zeus, containing the origin of Zeus's thunder priesthood. It is difficult to say why Zeus integrated the thunder priesthood into his thunder scepter. Perhaps, this matter may contain the greatest mystery of the entire world of Chaos. So for Poseidon, if he can obtain the Thunder Wand in the early stages, it can be said that this artifact will help Poseidon navigate through the most dangerous period of growth. Poseidon shook his head and bounced these unrealistic ideas out of his mind. The most important thing for him now is that his mother Demeter returns and asks him about the way to obtain a new priesthood. In fact, Poseidon himself could also do such a thing, but for him, the most important thing now is to first understand his priesthood. Instead of thinking about how to obtain a priesthood. Because of this matter, his mother must be very experienced. His mother is a deity of moderate divine power. If nothing unexpected happens, one can even advance to the level of powerful divine power. Suddenly, Poseidon frowned, as if he knew from his memory of the laws of the world that Zeus and the queen god Hera were only at the peak of moderate divine power. How did they overthrow that one? That divine king, the second divine king Clonus, and his wife are all powerful deities. How could Zeus and his companions defeat the Titan gods led by Uranus? Even the time goddess Rhea, who symbolizes the immutability of time, gave up resistance due to family affection. That powerful Cronus, he is also a powerful deity. He can withstand all the gods in the Zeus camp alone. Poseidon immediately took this thought out of his mind. He knew he couldn't think anymore. If he touches any secret, he may be destroyed by humanity. After all, due to the power of Poseidon's prophetic deity, he is definitely being watched by many powerful and capable deities now. Even Zeus, or Demeter telling him, may not have known the news of the prophecy of Poseidon. Only those ancient deities know about it, and those deities, without exception, have profound cultural heritage. His Highness Nyx, who is in charge of fate, is unaware of his identity from outside the world. Thinking of this, Poseidon felt a wave of unease in his heart. However, Posidonia still felt that Nyx probably didn't see through his identity. Otherwise, how could he have been born? When Posidonia thought of this, he immediately patted his face and murmured to himself, "Oh, it's all like this. It's amazing that he hasn't gotten rid of his wild thoughts yet. This is not the place where other gods don't know his inner thoughts. There are still many deities who can view the memories of other deities. For example, the memory goddess Mnemosyne, who settled in the underworld, is also the former lover of His Majesty Zeus." Poseidon spoke, wanting to verify his guess. "I remember she gave birth to 9 muse goddesses for the great divine King Zeus, who were responsible for love poetry, inspiration, music, poetry, drama, dance, philosophy, astronomy, mathematics, and other arts, serving as guides for the human soul." After Poseidon finished speaking about this matter, Poseidon gained a portion of the power of a secret priesthood. And the memory goddess Mnemosyne, who was reclusive in the underworld, suddenly felt that something seemed to have happened to her. "I feel like my whole body has been exposed." In the river of time, the goddess of time, Rhea, represents the timeless nature of time. Suddenly, there was a backlash. A part of the origin of her clergy seems to have been forcibly stripped away. She knew that the source of the power that belonged to her had become independent and a separate priesthood. But the goddess of time, Rhea, who represents the inexhaustible passage of time, is not in the mood to care about these things. She still needs to search for her husband in the long river of time. "Originally, my husband loved me, but I actually hurt him so deeply, even protecting his youngest son and overthrowing his divine throne. I regret it so much. I know I made a mistake, and I really want to make up for it." And in the agricultural temple, Poseidon was shocked to see the hidden divine figure falling into his palm. He actually obtained another divine spirit. How did he obtain it? Posidonia couldn't help but see that the deity in his hand was lost in thought. He just talked about a memory goddess, but it seems like everyone knows about it. Posidonia learned that the clergy in his hand was called secret. Unfortunately, the secretive deity cannot protect the secret. Is it right or wrong to obtain this priesthood? Posidonia's thoughts surged, as if he had caught an inspiration for obtaining a priesthood. Posidonia scratched his head, feeling that he was already close to that truth, but he couldn't find that crucial point. Just as Posidonia kept grabbing his own hair. On the steps of the agricultural temple in the distance, a voice said, "My God, who possesses seed power, one of the most powerful prophetic gods, and my beloved son Poseidon, why are you troubled by things?" The teasing voice of Demeter reached Poseidon's ears. Posidonia immediately turned around. She said to the goddess behind her, "Mother, I was just thinking, I just saw something with the power of my prophetic priesthood, and after speaking it out, I got a divine figure, but I don't know where this divine figure came from. I don't know how that divine figure appeared, how I got that divine figure, and what conditions did I meet?" Posidonia immediately asked a series of questions. Demeter touched Poseidon's hair and said nonchalantly, "My dear Poseidon, what are you worrying about? What is the priesthood you have obtained?" Demeter also believed that what Poseidon received was only a few small and scattered clergy. Although these priesthood can make nymphu or demigods deity. But it is not of great use to these deities who possess powerful priesthood. Posidonia immediately revealed the aura of this clergy and said, "The name of this clergy is called seclusion. Although I don't know why I got it." Demeter felt the aura of this deity and immediately took a breath, asking, "What is the name of this deity?" Demeter, although she already knew that this clergy should. But she needs to confirm again. Posidonia said in confusion, "The name of this clergy is called secret." "What's wrong? My dear mother." Demeter immediately infused his divine power into the body of Nymphu, who was serving around him, and said, "I have just bestowed upon you a divine power of mine. This power will explode your body and tear your souls to pieces when you reveal this secret, and you will never rest." Demeter warned Nymphu around him. Demeter was still careless. She thought that Posidonia had obtained some impure priesthood, but she didn't expect such a priesthood to startle her. Fortunately, Ningfu in the temple was her loyal supporter, so there shouldn't be any problems. The Ningfu immediately knelt down on the ground and respectfully said, "Yes, my dearest lord, I will obey your commands. Your most loyal Ningfu will always obey your commands and never betray you." Demeter saw their response and continued, "Of course, this divine power can also maintain your power. Although it cannot make you become gods, it can keep your bodies from decaying and always be with me. If you still have the chance to perform, you will have the opportunity to obtain the throne under my child and my canonization. Become a member of the immortal gods." Why did Demeter put Poseidon first? She believed that these Ningfu should be able to understand her implied meaning. Because the current Poseidon lacks his subordinates. And these Ningfu people know the secret of Poseidon. If they are loyal, they will be his best subordinates. And as long as they are loyal to Poseidon, her clever son will definitely not be stingy with his power to bestow gods upon several Ningfu. Upon hearing Demeter's words, the several Ningfu women's eyes lit up and they immediately said with assurance, "The great agricultural goddess Demeter, please rest assured that we will always keep a secret and serve His Highness Poseidon forever." Demeter waved his hand and said to the Ningfu, "All right, you guys go down first. I have something to say to my child Poseidon." So these Ningfu women lined up neatly and left the palace, waiting outside for the call of the main gods. Demeter said to Poseidon, "The gods of the world are actually divided into two categories. The primordial gods and the other gods." Demeter pointed to himself and then to Poseidon, saying, "Do you know what the primordial god means?" Before Poseidon could speak, Demeter immediately said, "The primordial god refers to the deity to whom this law belongs completely, and that deity is the primordial god. Another situation is that the concrete manifestation of this thing is that deity. That deity is also the primordial god, and it is a relatively powerful existence within the primordial god. And those deities who have not fully mastered the origin, or have only mastered a small part of the origin, or are only ordained by other deities, are inherently lower than the origin god. Although they also have eternal life and eternal youth, their power cannot match the origin god. You and I both belong to the category of primordial gods, because the laws of my agriculture belong entirely to me, and the embodiment of the seed is you. But your prophecy about prophecy is not. Because this primordial source does not belong to you, you are just one of the most powerful gods in charge of it. And the clergy only determines the upper limit, the lower limit still needs to be gradually raised through time accumulation, but you don't have to worry. Although your birth time is short, just now I have received a promise from your irresponsible father, the god King Zeus, that he will bless you. Also, don't be so reckless next time. You should have gathered such a divine figure under Ningfu's nose." Poseidon suddenly had a flash of inspiration and ignored the promise given by Zeus as mentioned by Demeter. He immediately said, "What would happen if a new thing that has never appeared in this world appeared in my mother?" Demeter touched Poseidon's hair and said, "So, you will become the representative of that kind of thing. Even the divine king cannot deprive you of ownership. And you will also receive the approval of the laws of the world and unparalleled favor." Poseidon immediately showed the seeds of his artifact world tree to Demeter and said, "Mother, you see, this is my artifact. As long as I have it, I can create new plants. Can I obtain the deity of the plant god?" Demeter immediately covered Poseidon's mouth and said, "Don't say such a thing, you know. The deity of plants belongs to that great Gaia goddess, who is one of the 5 primordial gods." Poseidon frowned and didn't say anything before promising Demeter, "Okay, my mother, I won't talk nonsense anymore. So if I create a new plant, will I become the deity of that plant?" Demeter said, "Actually, it's not necessarily because only plants that are useful for the development of the world will. They are bestowed with divine power by the laws of the world, ignited with divine fire, and become gods. There are usually 2 situations for this kind of thing. The first is that the individual born from the first plant of this plant will become a deity and then become your own deity. The second is that you become the ruler of that plant, and you can decide the decline and prosperity of that plant. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Mother-Child Dialogue. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Mother-Child Dialogue. Posiadoni frowned and said, "So, mother, haven't you tried to create new plants?" Demeter smiled and said, "Oh, you're still taking care of me, Petit Savannah. For me, there's no need to create new plants. After all, I'm the god in charge of agriculture, a natural deity, and I don't need such a weak priesthood." Posiadoni immediately retorted, "If there were many weak clergy, wouldn't there be more power?" Demeter touched Poseidon's head and said, "But most of your time will be spent fulfilling your ministry like this. What about your own time? As a deity, you must learn to enjoy it. With so many ministry duties, the time spent fulfilling them will be too much. Just like my ministry, every time Helios spends half of his time in the sky, it already takes up most of my time, which has made me very painful." Demeter continued, "If I continue with a few more clergy, even though it's not as busy as agriculture, it will definitely take up more of my time and I won't have time to accompany you." Posiadoni looked at Demeter standing in front of him, her face full of love and kindness. How could he not be favored by Demeter, who was her first child? Posiadoni could only slowly say, "Mother, if I have another clergy in the future, I will be very busy. Will you help me?" Demeter was taken aback for a moment. She knew what Poseidon meant, and he was going to obtain many scattered priesthood to help him quickly advance to the divine power level. Demeter could only touch Poseidon's golden, smooth, slightly curled hair and say, "You go do it, I will support you behind you." After speaking, Demeter let out a sigh, knowing that the child had grown up. Posiadoni blinked his eyes at Demeter and said, "Mother, you don't think I'm leaving you, do you? You forget that although I'm just a god with weak divine power, as the god of origin, I can also be conferred the title of a god." Demeter was taken aback for a moment, then laughed heartily and said, "Poseidon, you are really smart. The power of that wisdom should belong to you, not to the missing Matthias." Just as Demeter uttered this sentence, Zeus on the throne in the thunder temple of the divine king suddenly felt a headache in his mind. He suddenly felt that the spiritual eyes of the already dormant wisdom hydrology, Métis, seemed to be waking up. Zeus immediately used the power of the divine king to suppress the power that was about to awaken, causing her to fall into a deep sleep again. Oceanus, who was embracing the ocean in the farthest part of the ocean, said to his wife beside him, "Tess, did you just feel the breath of our daughter Métis? That power flashed by, and I seemed to feel it. I knew Zeus was dishonest long ago, but Matthias refused to listen to my advice and insisted on helping that fickle Zeus," said Tyzes, snorting coldly beside Oceanus. Oceanos said, "Zeus will receive retribution, and the disappearance of Métis will be counted on him." After speaking, Oceanos fell into a deep sleep while holding on to Theseus. Many beautiful flowers suddenly bloomed around the agricultural temple, and the power of light was hidden secretly around it. A message came from this power to an inconspicuous Ningfu, saying, "Go and monitor that newly born deity carefully. Although he may be weak now, I need his strength." I saw the other Ningfu secretly bow and say, "Yes, my lord." After speaking, a dark light flowed out of Ningfu's eyes, and her face was not as ordinary as what she had hidden. At the same time, Posiadoni, who was inside the agricultural temple, said to Demeter, "My mother, I am going to the earth now and I hope you can allow me." Demeter frowned for an instant and said, "My most precious treasure, my beloved seed and the prophecy of Poseidon. Why are you so anxious? You have just been born. With me around, no one can threaten you, even if I cannot protect you, and the father of your divine king, you don't have to worry about your safety. Our original God will not perish, and even if we fall into deep sleep, there will be a day of awakening." Posiadoni patted Demeter's hand and said, "Mother, I know your love for me, but what I want is not just to live like this. I want to live peacefully instead of under someone else's wings. I want all the gods to know my name." Demeter took a breath and said, "I will support you, my beloved child Poseidon. I will always wait for you, and I will always be your strongest support." After Demeter finished speaking, Poseidon hugged Demeter and said, "Mother, I'm leaving. I came to the earth because one of my prophesied deities knew about my opportunities." After speaking, Poseidon hugged Demeter and left Demeter's agricultural temple. Seeing Poseidon leave, Demeter let out a sigh and quietly followed him to protect him. Demeter felt that Poseidon had some reason to go to the earth, but she still couldn't rest assured and wanted to protect him. And now Poseidon secretly left the center of the world, Mount Olympus, through the heavenly gate of Olympus. The goddess, one of the three goddesses of time, who was guarding this heavenly gate, blinked in her eyes and slowly shot a divine power from her own hand, shooting it towards the distant temple. After Poseidon left, Mount Olympus seemed to regain its usual calmness, as if this one had never been born, but the waves caused by Poseidon are far from over. How powerful is the prophecy deity on Mount Olympus who was able to predict his future from the moment he was born. Although his level only has a faint divine power, this is where he is most valuable. After all, a low level means easy mastery, so he can directly become a god. Although his mother is an agricultural goddess, this goddess is not known for her combat prowess. As for his father, he must be even more envious of this Poseidon. He will only add fuel to the situation behind his back, making this His Highness Poseidon wholeheartedly devoted to him. But they also had a chance, because before Zeus reacted, taking him away was also an opportunity. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Seed Growth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Seed Growth. After Poseidon walked down the Mount Olympus, he had many more tales behind him. There are some that Poseidon can see, while others are hidden behind him. It seems like I want to perform a scene of praying mantis catching cicadas and yellow sparrows behind. Poseidon suddenly frowned. He didn't expect his attraction to the gods to be so strong. However, the corners of his mouth also twitched. He actually felt a few weak deities following behind him, and he didn't even think about how much he weighed. What was he trying to do? Or perhaps it was their master who pushed them over to monitor him. Poseidon could not help but roast. I was born one day. Why did this group of people get the news so quickly? What about the agreed secret? This secret is not so good. Demeter, who was following behind Poseidon, looked at Poseidon walking calmly on the ground and murmured, "Poseidon, do you know now? Do you know your attraction to that group of people?" Poseidon, as a deity with the power of prophecy from birth. He is definitely being watched by many people. Even around the agricultural temple of Demeter, there must be many divine eyes and ears coming to spy on the god Poseidon. Poseidon's desire to create new plants on the earth is undoubtedly a huge opportunity for those gods who cannot find the opportunity. But Poseidon had to come to the earth, because of his priesthood, he had to create his own power. And he knew he couldn't hide in Demeter's agricultural temple all the time, he had to find an ally in the early stages to form an alliance. So the first thing he did when he came to the earth was to prepare in advance for the cycle of reincarnation. That is to say, some scattered deities and clergy in the early stage, and another one is to find a strong and reliable ally. Don't Poseidon know his attraction? No. Poseidon was well aware that his attractiveness would only be greater than he thought, heavier rather than less. So he was thinking that in the agricultural temple, he had always been wary of the coveted gods. It would be better to take a gamble and come to the earth to find a powerful ally and make a contract with him. Isn't this better? So this time Poseidon came to the earth to screen for a reliable ally. He already had several targets. The first one is the future sun god Apollo, who is now only the god of plague and medicine. So Apollo needed the help of Poseidon very much, and with his help, his chances of obtaining the priesthood of the sun god would be much greater. Although Poseidon had known Apollo before his past life and was destined to become the sun god, Apollo did not know. So there is a lot of room for operation here. For Apollo, it would be great if he could establish an alliance with Poseidon. At least for Apollo today. The second one is the strategy goddess Athena. Although in her past life, she was a deity in charge of war, peace, and wisdom, the leader of the three major goddesses, and even held most of the power of textile and artistic priesthood. But now she is just a small strategy goddess, and all the origins of war belong to Ares, the child of Hera and Zeus. And now the source of wisdom belongs entirely to his mother, Medes with her spiritual eyes, who is still providing wisdom to Zeus in his brain. And the third one is Hades, the husband of the seed goddess Persephone, who is now the brother of the god King Zeus and the ruler of the underworld. Although Poseidon did not really like Hades, the ruler of the underworld beneath the dark earth. But it has to be admitted that he is actually the most suitable one among the three he has chosen. Because he possessed a power that could barely compete with Zeus. There is also the support of the night goddess, one of the four primordial gods, and the enigmatic Nyx goddess. After all, when Hades arrived in the underworld, that night goddess strangely sent all her children to Hades as his subordinates. So, in the eyes of most deities, the goddess Nyx places great importance on this Hades. Even though Hades was always the object of ridicule in the memories of Poseidon's past life, it is undeniable that he was indeed very powerful. So as long as we make an alliance with Hades, he doesn't need to look at the faces of many gods anymore. Even the dignified goddess sitting in the position of the goddess, he no longer needs to bow down. Moreover, in order for Poseidon to obtain the position of reincarnation in the future, he must establish good relationships with the gods of the underworld, and even with the goddess of the night, Nyx, to at least allow him to settle in the underworld for a long time. Otherwise, even if he creates something that cannot be implemented, it will not be of much use. But Poseidon just can't overcome that inner hurdle. After all, Poseidon was very wary of the mysterious fixed number among the Greek gods. Thinking of this, Poseidon shook his head and came to the earth first. He wanted to see what kind of plants were missing on the earth. If he can create it. After all, the gods with immense energy following behind him have not yet set off. So for a while, he won't be facing a huge threat yet. He needs to get some puzzle about that priest in this brief gap. Or directly offend the gods of the sea and take away some of the divine duties related to the origin of water. Then rely on that little bit of water to obtain the power of ice and snow that can freeze everything. In this way, Poseidon possessed the power to threaten the gods. But this matter is destined to be difficult for Poseidon. After all, under the surveillance of so many gods, it is impossible to obtain any information about the origin of water. Or maybe, it will definitely come at a greater cost. The prerequisite for obtaining the priesthood of ice and snow is to possess the power of coldness. Although the seed is buried in the soil, Poseidon possesses a dark divinity, which does not match the power of ice and snow he desires. So Poseidon must exchange tangible things with the gods who control the origin of water. For example, things predicted by Poseidon. For example, Poseidon could give him a chance to prophesy. Now he is strolling on the earth, wanting to exchange with that Thais. After all, she is the mother of water. Moreover, she was also the wife of the deity Okeanos who surrounded the ocean, so that was enough. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Do Goddess. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Do Goddess. Poseidon thought of this and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Poseidon sighed softly and said, "It turns out that the great Prince Thyses and His Highness Okeanos also have weaknesses." Just as Poseidon finished speaking this sentence, the power of water in the sky began to intensify, and the elemental forces of heaven and earth began to converge towards the direction of water. Poseidon knew which His Highness Thyses, or which His Highness Okeanos, was about to come to his side. As long as they come to Poseidon's side, Poseidon can negotiate terms with them. Regardless of who comes to Poseidon's side, Poseidon has confidence in them to give up some of the power of water. Poseidon only needs to obtain a portion of the power of water, so he has the confidence to seize the greatest benefit when Zeus calculated the sun god Helios. After all, there is also a part of the Aeon attribute power in the power of seeds, so it happens to form that divine character. Even with the blessing of that deity, Poseidon may directly reach the level of weak divine power. So I hope Poseidon can successfully complete this transaction, even if it's just the slightest bit about the power of water. Just as Poseidon was pondering, the water elements between heaven and earth formed a long staircase as if welcoming something. I saw a graceful and elegant goddess wearing thin gauze slowly walking down the stairs made up of the power of water. I saw her wearing a crown made of jewelry and pearls on her head. Especially in the middle of the crown, there is a pink pearl with a hint of purple, emitting a mysterious and powerful aura. The goddess came to Poseidon's side and said, "His Highness Poseidon, the newly born god of seeds, possesses the power of prophecy no less than that of His Highness the Nyx, whose fate is unpredictable." She politely asked, "Your Highness, I would like to know what you meant by that sentence you just said." She is the mother of water, the confluence of countless rivers, and the wife of the eternal Okeanos, Tess, who is surrounded by the other side of the ocean. She holds most of the power about water. As for why this Tess came over, it was because Poseidon directly called out the name of that Tess without any cover, and it was under the surveillance of many gods. It would be difficult for Tyzes to pay attention to Poseidon's speech. Moreover, what Poseidon said has a great deal to do with Theseus and Orionis. It can be said that Poseidon's just sentence directly grabbed the dead end of Thais. Poseidon bowed elegantly to the mother of the water source and said, "Your esteemed mother of the water source, Tessis, please forgive my offense. My words just now were unintentional, please don't mind." Tyche looked directly at Poseidon and said, "Poseidon, the son of Demeter, please state your conditions. What do you want from me?" Poseidon opened his innocent big eyes, revealing a childlike gaze, and spoke in a clear and loud voice to Tyzes, "What are you talking about? Your Highness Tyzes, why can't I understand?" Tyzes snorted coldly and said, "This little son of Demeter, put away your innocent and innocent eyes. Please tell me about the prophecy of me and Orionis. I will give you a generous reward, as long as it is something we can give." Poseidon put away his playful smile and said seriously to her, "Is your Highness Tyzes really capable of anything? What if I want a powerful priesthood?" Tyche frowned and looked at the newly born deity in front of him, unsure of what he was thinking. Then, after a moment of silence, she said, "Poseidon, it depends on whether your prophecy is important. Your Highness, do you want to know who the true ruler of the last ocean is?" Poseidon replied in a different way. Poseidon knew that Tethys and her husband, who surrounded the ocean, had been competing with the concept of water, symbolizing the sunken land of Pontus and his children for the dominance of the ocean. Tyche felt a little nervous when he heard Poseidon say this. Can it be said that she and Okeanos failed? For a moment, she dared not think anymore. If even she and Orionis fail, how should her children deal with themselves? You should know that she and the children of Okeanos are either river gods or spring goddesses, most of whom are regional priests. These clergy can be replaced. Tethys did not believe that Pentos and his children would spare those clergy. Making their children semi-gods or nymphu is already an extramarital grace. After all, if Thais had won, she would have done the same. So she used her own ideas to imagine that ending. And only a few of her sons have embarked on their own path. He is not worried about the daughters on his own path. But what about the goddesses Okeanides who haven't walked their own paths? Without him and Okeanos, they are no different from the ordinary nymphu. The youngest son of the Demeter family, have you really predicted that outcome? If you dare to lie to me, I will let you taste the feeling of suffocating and dying in the water. Immediately, he said coldly to Poseidon. Poseidon looked at Tess, who was caught up in his own strategy, and said, Your Highness Tess, what are you thinking? I haven't even said that result yet, and you've started to think wildly. If you guess wrong, I'm not responsible. Tess seemed to have realized that she seemed to have taken it for granted. When I saw Poseidon saying that sentence, because Poseidon was a prophetic god, I thought highly of every sentence of Poseidon. She seems to have fallen into Poseidon's trap. Tyche gradually lost his patience and looked at Poseidon coldly, saying, "Do you have any demands? Hurry up and bring them up. Then tell me your damn prophecy." Poseidon smiled and looked at the impatient Tess in front of him, saying, "Your Highness Tess, I need the deity of dew that appears on the plants in the morning, and all the uses of this deity after me have nothing to do with you. As long as you make this promise, I will tell you the prophecy." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Rulers of the Sea Boundary. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Rulers of the Sea Boundary. Tethys impatiently said, "I understand." So he tore out the part about the origin of dew from his own body. Then he forcefully shot a divine idea into Poseidon's body. Poseidon's face turned white. His divine body had just been injured and it wouldn't take 10 years to recover to its original form. But Poseidon's lips began to rise, but the next second he retracted them. After bowing, Poseidon slowly said, "That Sea Emperor Poseidon will become the king of the sea, and will gain the loyalty of the 3,000 river gods and the Oxenides. He will also marry the daughters of Nereus and Doris as the queen of the sea." Tess frowned and looked at Poseidon, saying, "What about me, Orionis, and the old thing Pontus?" Poseidon smiled and said, "Your Highness, I can only give you so much, after all, I am just a god with weak divine power." Poseidon silently lit a wax for Poseidon in his heart. "I'm sorry, uncle, you won't blame me, will you?" Poseidon pretended to be insincere and silently recited in his heart. "Anyway, Poseidon is not a lie, after all, the final outcome is that Poseidon becomes the king of the sea world. And what does it mean that the god of Poseidon hangs directly behind him? At least restrain your breath, this one doesn't even restrain his breath, indicating that I want to take away your thoughts." So, Poseidon directly told Tessas about this matter and found something to do for Poseidon, otherwise it would not be appropriate to let this kind of god track others again. When Tyche saw that useful information could no longer be obtained from Poseidon, she snorted coldly and immediately left, without asking where Poseidon had used this power. Poseidon saw Tysas leave and smiled in a corner that other gods couldn't see. Poseidon seemed to have lost his sanity and gained the power of dew from Tysas. Although he gained something, offending Tysas was not worth it. However, if he didn't do that, Poseidon was very suspicious that Tysas would still include Poseidon under her command after Poseidon obtained that priesthood. Don't think they are so noble, their high position indicates that they are the winners. The temptation of powerful clergy to them is great, and the character of the gods cannot withstand scrutiny. For Poseidon, he didn't mind using the greatest malice to speculate about Tysas. After all, in this world that is worse, it's always good to keep an extra eye on it, even if Poseidon is just a newborn. What Poseidon just told Theseus was indeed true, that Poseidon had indeed become the king of the sea, and that the 3,000 river gods and 3,000 sea goddesses, Oceanides, were also subject to him. However, their backstage is still there, and there is nothing going on between Tysas and Okeanos. Well, the sea-friendly Nereus I just mentioned is also true, as is the child of Doris, the youngest daughter of Theseus and Orionis. But Poseidon did not tell Tessas, and the final outcome was that Poseidon and Amphitrite divorced. Poseidon still looked the same, but he didn't know after Poseidon made such a prediction. What would Thais and Okeanos think? What would even Pontus, the father of the gods representing the 5 sea faces and the lover of Gaia, do? As long as they attract their gaze, even some people's gaze can reduce their attention. Poseidon is really under a lot of pressure now, and the gods focused on him occupy at least a large part. Even those weak gods have some thoughts, after all, the current level of Poseidon is only a weak divine power. And after Poseidon made this prophecy, The first person to shift their gaze was not the Pontos that Posidonia had in mind, but also Thyses and her husband Okeanos. But Zeus sitting on the throne of the divine king. Zeus first developed a sense of fear towards Poseidon. Zeus did not originally consider Poseidon as a challenger to his divine throne. After all, Poseidon appeared so brainless every time he appeared at the conference. How could Zeus pay attention to such a deity? And his most concerned object is his silent elder brother, Hades, the actual master of the underworld. But he didn't expect his good son to give him a big surprise. Unexpectedly, in front of everyone's eyes, a prophecy about Poseidon was made. This raised a hint of fear in Zeus towards Poseidon. Poseidon also received the prophecy made by Poseidon in the palace of the emperor. The first thing that rises up for him is not worry, but joy, because he has become the actual master of the sea realm. He became a true sea emperor in the future. But Poseidon never thought about what the other three would do to him after knowing this prophecy. You should know that they are the actual masters of the sea world. After obtaining the due goddess, Posidonia began his journey on the earth. Posidonia kept walking on the earth, measuring the size of the earth. Still admiring the unique biological species of various regions on the earth. This also laid the foundation for Poseidon's creation of new life forms in the future. Although with the current Poseidon, there is no way to create any kind of creature, even if he has his artifact, the seed of the world tree. Posidonia slowly walked on the earth, collecting seeds of various plants. Poseidonia's original intention in collecting these seeds was to study them and produce new changes. Finally, let these plants become a new species, just like how biology guides mutation and evolution on Earth. But in the process of collecting seeds, there is also an unexpected joy. Posidonia was surprised to find that his seed deity had begun to strengthen its power, and his mastery of seeds had also become stronger and stronger. That's right, in the world of chows. All life did not have seeds until after the birth of Poseidon. This is an independent reproductive organ bestowed upon living beings by the world. Although it now appears that all living organisms have seeds and have produced them. In this same season, all different plants give birth to seeds. But with the improvement and deepening of seed power. The time, place, and season of seed birth vary among different plants, which is also one of Poseidonia's responsibilities. As long as Poseidon divides all plants according to their characteristics and adaptability, the time when seeds are produced, how they are produced, and the time required to conceive a seed, etc. As long as Poseidon completes this responsibility, his power level will be greatly improved. End of this chapter.